Good morning, teachers out there today. It's me, Jane Bell, with another edition of Time Smart Teaching. And today I'm really delighted to be joined by Florence Okwusogu, who is a teacher coach and is here to help middle leaders to know what the difference is between coaching and mentoring people in your department and when it might be best to use each or both of these tools. So good morning, Florence. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Jane.
How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a lovely Saturday as I'm sitting here with you, and the sun is out, so that's good.
That's always good. It's been a long winter. I feel spring's been a long time coming this year.
Yeah.
And so we're looking forward with our series at the moment to support middle leaders and heads of department, as you know.
Okay.
With managing the workload and the well-being of their staff, in particular maybe like newly qualified teachers or recently qualified teachers. So I just wanted to know a little bit about you, your background. Why did you decide to become a teacher coach, and what led you to kind of that decision?
Well, it was something that I fell into and I guess slowly transitioned into, because I have been in the coaching space for a number of years, but I didn't start with being a coach or mentor for teachers. I started with mentoring and coaching women and mentoring and coaching people who had quite chronic illnesses, stress-related illnesses, and were struggling with managing many of their symptoms. So I guess what really led me into focusing on teachers specifically was my own experience of being a teacher. So like many, I burnt out in the job after around 4 or 5 years. I took some time out of teaching to address many of the physical, mental and emotional symptoms that had arisen. And that's how I kind of got into coaching and mentoring people with chronic health conditions and women. When I did go back into teaching after doing that work on myself, I was a very different person, but I found that the environment was still very much the same.
Yeah.
So I had moved along, but there were the patterns within teaching and within the culture was still very much the same. So after doing some work with some coach, with a coach of my own, it dawned on me that there was an opportunity in this space to support other teachers. And one of the things that coaching offers is space to grow, to reflect, to develop, to learn, to really become the best version of yourself. And even though teaching is supposed to be a reflective profession, there isn't an opportunity to reflect for teachers, for leaders. It's going from like one thing to another really, really quickly. And you're always in this kind of fight, flight, freeze mode, always, in this heightened, anxious, stress mode. And it's no wonder that so many teachers burn out. They develop weird and wonderful symptoms, like I did. So yeah, that's how I kind of went from working with women and people with chronic illnesses to now really focusing on teachers and teacher support.
Fabulous. And I totally agree, and I'm sure everyone watching here who's still teaching will agree that fight flight, we're driven by anxiety, adrenaline and anxiety, aren't we, just to get through the day at the moment, especially with COVID, which is just heaped extra work on everybody. So tell us a little bit about the difference between coaching and mentoring, so that we know what the difference is first of all.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because when I first started in coaching, obviously I labeled myself as a coach without really understanding what a coach was. But when I look back at it now, I realized that there was so much I was doing under that label. So I was mentoring, I was training, I was coaching, and maybe doing even a little bit of counseling. So I think coaching is often used as a catch-all term, without a real awareness of what coaching is. So with mentoring, if we think about it, it's really being under the wing of somebody who has gone before you and who has gained that wisdom, that insight, the skills and experience to support you. So that's what we traditionally think as a mentor. Maybe it's a little bit, if we think about it from an education perspective, it's an apprentice, right? Yeah. Somebody working under somebody else, and that person giving you the benefit of their years and their wisdom and their experience. Whereas coaching, you don't necessarily have to have a background in that area. So you will have coaches, as long as they know how to coach, because being able to coach is a skill. It's not necessarily about knowledge. Some people say it's a science and an art. So it's actually a skill. We have coaching frameworks, coaching questions, coaching skills, coaching tool sets. Whereas mentoring is about the experience and the knowledge and that support that you get from somebody who's walked the walk that you want to walk in. Coaching is about somebody offering you a space to reflect using tools to help you discover your own answers, to help you achieve particular goals. One of my lecturers described it as helping your clients discover their own key to unlock their doors. So that's really a really nice way of looking at it. The client has all the answers, but they maybe don't know how to get to those answers. So as a coach, your role is to support them to open the door, to find the key, open the door, and to really have the courage to step through the door and see what's on the other side.
Okay, that's a really nice way of summarizing each one. So from what I've understood, typically like the head of department relationship with the NQT to me sounds more like mentoring, because obviously we've got the skills as teachers and we're like helping them to become teachers. So that to me sounds like that's what goes on. So when might it be appropriate for heads of department to make the transition from mentoring to doing coaching? Should that even be with NQTs or not? Should that be maybe with more experienced staff? When would you know when the time is to change?
Okay, so really good questions. So you can be a mentor and a coach. I think it's really important to make the distinction right at the beginning with whoever it is that you're working with. So make it clear whether this is going to be fundamentally a mentoring relationship or whether it's going to be coaching relationship. So if you're a mentor, you can still use coaching within that relationship, but you need to make it clear because it changes the dynamics of the relationships and the expectations within that relationship. If you're going to have primarily a coaching relationship and you might want to mentor, again, you need to make that super clear at the beginning because it influences everything and it changes the dynamics again. So for example, if you are mentoring, then I feel like it's a lot easier to switch into coaching because the relationship is very much hierarchical anyway with a mentor. So you might want to pull out some coaching tools in the form of questions or use a particular framework or model to support whoever it is that you're working with. However, when you're using a coaching, when you're primarily using the term coach and you want to offer coaching, it can be difficult to make that transition because whilst there are different types of coaching, for example, you can have directive versus non-directive coaching, just to make it a bit more complicated. Fundamentally, coaching is supposed to be an empowering relationship. So it's supposed to be same level relationship. There's not one expert. You just bring different skills and knowledge to the relationship.
So for that reason, do you think it's more beneficial for someone other than the subject leader to do coaching with NQTs? Maybe this is why they tend to have, like, there's usually someone who has like an umbrella responsibility, don't they, for all the NQTs in the school. There's usually someone in the senior leadership team. So if a head of department wants to do a coaching session, do you think it should be timetabled as a coaching session? This is now a coaching session, so that someone's aware of that, the change.
So the problem that you get is with the existing relationship that that person has with the subject leader or the head of department. That will always have an influence on, I guess, the coach's ability to really open themselves up.
Right.
So that's something that you do have to pay attention to. It's difficult if the mentor hasn't had any coach training. Because what coaching does, and this was something that I had to learn, because as I said, I fell into coaching. I didn't have any training when I fell into it. I only developed this awareness of what I was doing after I had started my master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. My very first assignment was on the difference between directive and non-directive coaching. So I just want to quickly differentiate between those two first. I mean, probably it makes sense anyway, but directive is basically you telling somebody what to do and directing the outcomes, the relationships, directing, we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this. That is where a lot of teachers, leaders who coach fall into directive coaching. Whereas non-directive coaching is about holding space, using the tools, but really giving permission for the coachee to explore and to fail. That's something that we're not allowed to do in teaching, to try and fail. So that's why a lot of directive coaching is used. And if you do not know the difference between directive and non-directive coaching, and if you feel that it's okay to just use directive coaching all the time, then you're going to create problems within that relationship, because it's not truly coaching. You're not truly allowing that person to grow, to evolve, to become more confident, because that's one aspect of coaching. If you're trying to build confidence and capabilities in NQTs, then it's important that they discovery learning. That's something that we know as teachers already. We know about zones of proximal development and the importance of discovery learning and curiosity and, trying and failing, but we don't allow our staff to do that. We don't give them that space to do that. But how are they supposed to learn, and how are they supposed to grow? They can't.
Exactly. And it's really difficult because lots of NQTs have maybe not had a range of teaching experience that they would have had normally due to COVID, or they've just done lots of like online delivery, and they've already probably not got a lot of confidence and haven't had that time, like you say, to try different things or different teaching methods and reflect and let them fail or whatever. And so when we have an appraisal process, don't we, that doesn't allow for failure. If you don't meet your objectives, you're put on a support plan, or you have intervention. So I feel like there needs to be obviously more opportunity for this non-directive coaching, as you say, in teaching, because it could have so many benefits. But the appraisal process that we have just is kind of like almost like goes against that, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's funny because when I was looking at this whole directive versus non-directive coaching within education, the DfE, their definition of coaching is very much directive, which is probably why it's so prominent within schools and the education system. That's their version of coaching, but it's not true coaching. And that's why I do talk about the distinction between mentoring and coaching. if you are coaching, it's okay to be directive sometimes, but it can't be all the time.
Yeah.
There has to be opportunity for non-directive. And the reason why I say that is because they create different outcomes. When you use non-directive approaches, you enable that person to begin to trust themselves, to trust you, to trust the process. And that is what develops confidence and self-efficacy, the belief that they can stand in front of the classroom and teach, or they can deal with a particular difficult student, or they can manage their workload. But if you're there telling them, do this, then do that, then do this after you've done that, and this is the way to do it, then all you're doing is building dependency.
Yeah.
And teaching them that the only way to do this job is your way. They may have totally different set of skills, aptitudes, strengths, but if the only thing that you're doing is teaching them how to go about it and do it in the way that you think is the best way, then you're limiting them from fulfilling their potential and discovering what they can bring to the classroom.
Yeah, I agree totally. And so could you give us some examples, like from people, from teachers that you've worked with, where coaching's been successful, and like how their teaching improved, or how their lives as a teacher improved as a result of coaching?
I think one of the main things is when you offer that space, because what you're doing is you're carving out time within that busy, hectic day, and you're giving them that opportunity to reflect. And what usually comes up from that is clarity. And with that clarity, increased confidence. I was speaking to a teacher just the other day who was struggling. I won't go into the details, but was struggling with a major decision. And her head was just jumbled. It was like, she described it as a ball of wool, and she couldn't make head nor tail of it. So by pulling out my coaching toolbox, listening, which is key within coaching, one of the things that my coaching lecturer would say was, if you're doing most of the talking, you're not coaching.
Yeah.
So listening. And the funny thing about listening is that people, they don't like that silence, and so they will automatically want to fill the space. The more you listen, the more you allow the coachee, the client, the opportunity to start to pull out what's been in their head. And once they pull it out, and sometimes even just verbalizing it, articulating it and expressing what's going on inside of it, it's like they're holding it up, and they're having that opportunity to look at it outside of them for the first time and think, oh yeah, oh yeah. And that gives you the chance to say, okay, so let's look over what you've said here, and let's weigh it up against what you said here. What can you see? How does it make you feel? What's going through your mind now? And those are the powerful questions that coaching comes. Well, what's another way that you can look at it? Or how else might you try to tackle it? What do you think if we tried it this way or that way? Have you ever thought about it from this perspective? Now that when you say something like, have you ever thought about it from this perspective, you're kind of moving towards directivity, but that's okay. You can go along this spectrum of being non-directive to directive, but as I said, it's about recognizing that you can't be directive all the time. And it has a very different feel to, have you done this? Okay, try this now. And what happened when you did this? You can see that the energy is very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So if we've got some heads of the department watching and they like this idea of non-directive coaching, and from what you said, a lot of it is about listening more than speaking and giving advice, can you share like a tool or a questioning structure that heads of department could start to use with recently qualified teachers to help support them?
Yeah. So the most famous one is the GROW model. Maybe they've even heard of it. So it really is, I guess, outcome oriented or goal oriented. So you start off with the goal.
So G for goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then R is reality. So you're exploring their current reality. So the problems that they're facing, what they've tried. So basically environment around the goal, the reality around the goal. The O is really looking at obstacles and opportunities. And then W is way forward, or what they want to do next. So within that framework, it allows you to, there are questions associated with each part of that model, and you can pick and choose those questions, but it gives you a structure to work down. And it may be that you do G, R, go back to G, then R, O, R a bit more, and then O, and then W, but it still gives you that structure to work down. And that's a good starting point if you've not had any experience of coaching, or your coaching has been very directive previously, and you want to have that more kind of open communication and explorative style of relating with the person you're working with.
That sounds like a really good starting point for heads of department to go from. So is it the GROW model? Is that right?
GROW, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I don't know if you have like a website or a resource yourself that we could signpost teachers to. If so, we'll get our heads together and we'll put a link in the comments box at the end for people so you can get a little bit more information from that. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you, Florence, for sharing that with us. So if there's teachers out there or non-teachers or heads of department that think, actually, I could really benefit from doing, from some coaching myself personally, or outside of what school are providing or not providing, as the case may be, how can they get in touch with you, and what sort of people would benefit from coaching?
Okay, so I do have a website. It's called Aligned Flow, www.alignedflow.co.uk. It's a very woo-woo sounding name, because I'm definitely woo-woo. But the idea behind it is using a positive psychology focus to coaching, because there are different types of coaching. And really what I'm about is helping the people I work with reconnect with themselves. And that looks like discovering their strengths, their values, what lights them up, their skills, experience, developing that inner self-belief, that confidence, and as a result of that, tapping into the best version of themselves and really getting that clarity, that confidence, that motivation, that inspiration to just go out and do whatever it is that they want to do, and be just that happiest, bubbliest, brightest version of themselves, whatever it looks like. So alignedflow.co.uk. On social media, you can find me a lot on LinkedIn. So I can put my my @ because I don't know the long link for my LinkedIn profile.
Don't worry, Florence. I'll make sure that your LinkedIn profile, Twitter feed, your email, and your website are all in the comments or in the description of the video. So don't worry about rattling them off the top of your head. So thank you so much for joining me. I felt like I've learned a lot about coaching just listening to you, and hopefully the listeners have too. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up? Anything you feel is worth a mention that we've not talked about?
So I do offer one-to-one coaching, and I have a membership that will be launching soon. So if you want to find out more about that, that's kind of a more slower paced coaching experience, coaching and mentoring experience, I should say. So if you want to find out about that, again, you can find out through my website or by my LinkedIn profile.
Fabulous. And when are you hoping to have had the group coaching set up by?
So I'm hoping by latest end of March.
Okay,
I
so
would ideally like to have it all set up by the end of February, but I'm trying to be realistic, think about the reality of my goal.
Yeah, I second that with my upcoming book. In my head, it was going to be published before Christmas.
Yeah.
Still not quite there.
Yeah. We all do that, don't we?
Yeah.
So that's, again, why I think it's really important to work with somebody who can support you in that way. It's extra accountability, support, confidence booster for sure. Somebody on your side cheerleading you on.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of teachers need, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, especially NQTs, maybe their assistant, maybe their head of department stressed out, they haven't got that enough one-to-one time to give them. Maybe they're firefighting or they've got staff absence. It's nice to have someone outside of like the school, so that, you know, that, like you said, there's no connotations with what they say. It's not going to be passed around, it's not going to be held against them, or it's not going to colour them in any way. So yeah, fantastic.
There's just one thing that I would add though, as you've said that, leaders and managers are human too. That's the thing. And within that school environment, it can be very easy for transference to happen. Transference is taken from counselling, and it's basically the idea of, it's best that I give an example. So say you've got a head of department who is quite emotional or quite needy, and you've got an NQT that relates to the head of department and begins to take a motherly role, because that happens. So that's transference that's happened there. So sometimes it is important to understand that even with the best intentions, the head of department, they might not be the best person to mentor or support that person if they're not aware of how transference can happen in that relationship. And they aren't aware of the signs that the person that they are coaching or supporting is also is experiencing transference as well. When you are working with somebody who knows that, then they can step back in the relationship, and they're under supervision as well, which is a big part that I haven't spoken about, the importance of supervision. So I just felt that I needed to bring that in.
That's a really good point. So I guess if we're going to sum up today's session, is that coaching can go on within a mentoring relationship, but it needs to be segmented and it needs to be different. And we can have two different types: as directive and indirective. Have I got that right?
Directive and non-directive.
No, that's it. Directive, not directive. If people want to start using a simple coaching model with a department, they can use this GROW method, but they also need to be reflective and think whether it is actually appropriate to coach that person. And I know that obviously there's loads more that we could talk about, and it's a massive topic, and this is just scratching the surface of coaching, which is brilliant. I mean, I had a coaching experience. It was called co-coaching when I was a newly qualified teacher many years ago. I actually can't remember anything about it. Like, I know that it happens, but it's had no impact on me. So I really hope that people are finding kind of use from this, even if it's just giving them that curiosity to find out more about coaching, or if coaching can benefit them. Or maybe you had a department thinking, I need to bring in a coach. I'm not going to do it myself, but perhaps I need to bring in a coach to help my department, because maybe I'm not best placed to do this. And that could obviously be another way forward. So thank you so much, Florence, for joining me this morning. Have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you for teachers if you've watched to the end of this video. if you've not subscribed or you're here for the first time today, subscribe to Time Smart Teaching channel. There'll be more content on how to support your department, and NQT is coming up again soon. And take care, everybody out there, and do not work too hard.
Thank you.
Bye.